Hi, I'm Sangeet. Welcome to video number 2 of 3, in which we are covering steps 3, 4 and 5 of how to use my flat mould transfer system. In this particular video we're going over the lab work, so we're going to be looking at mixing silicone, pouring it into your moulds, scraping your moulds and trimming away excess cap plastic from the edge. Step number 3, mix and pour. Weigh and mix silicone components and pour into mould, keeping to just within the translucent border. Right, so the idea is now we're going to weigh and mix our silicone, and I'm going to show you how to pour it, what the right kind of pour technique is, and other things to think about. So here we have my digital scales. I'm going to put on my gloves. Now, the silicones we use are medical grade, so in theory they're non-toxic even in their uncured form, but I do still prefer to wear gloves. Things get greasy and sticky and not very nice. So, right, now I'm using Gel 25, which is a very low viscosity product, which means that I don't need to degas it. If you are using thicker silicones, you may need to degas them. Something you're going to have to figure out. Now, what I have done with this silicone is I've actually mixed quite a lot of flock into this. So you can see that there's flock. That blue dot in there also kind of illustrates the translucency of the silicone. Now, with prosthetics, you do want a decent amount of translucency. Too much and it'll look fake. Not enough and it looks kind of opaque and leathery, which is not good either. Now, another thing to remember is that different silicones give you different softnesses, different brands of deadeners have different properties, so it's always worth doing cup tests first in a cup just to make sure that you've got the softness right. Another thing to remember as well is before you pour out your components, make sure that they're mixed properly. Pigments can sometimes settle, and also flock can also settle, which will just so that you can see this. Now, I'm going to mix kind of carefully. What I don't want to do is mix loads of air back into my silicone. So I'm going to stir it gently, making sure I scrape the sides and the bottom of my cup. Okay, so pour technique. What I don't want to do is very randomly pour this over my detail and potentially trap air in there. So what I'm going to do, the idea is to let gravity do the work for you. So I'm going to kind of pick a spot kind of in the middle, away from the detail but not close to the edge, and I'm just going to pour it in that way. So what I'll do is I'm going to pour it all in, keeping within the translucent border. It's at this point that I can let let it flow over that detail now that those deepest points are filled.
Step number 4, scrape and clean. Scrape away excess silicone to create your feathered edge. Clean silicone residue from white border with a cotton bud and allow silicone to set.
Now it's important to have plenty of clean tissues on standby. This is back to my original mixing stick. Now I'm just going to use this to carefully fan out the edge. So I'm now going to take my middle scraper and carefully drag it towards me, applying some pressure to my mould, but not so much that I'm going to tear or disturb that edge. It's also good to have some tissue on standby to keep your tool clean. So here's the technique. Pick a point over this edge and I'm going to carefully pull it towards me. Now you should end up with quite a bit of silicone on your tool. Now, most of the time one scrape is enough. I prefer to do two, so the first scrape is where I really remove any excess silicone, and my second scrape is to just make sure that my borders are clean. So you should be able to see there's a bit of silicone there. Now, you can apply more or less pressure depending on the thickness that you want your piece to come out at. Right, so the thing to do now is we've done our scrape and there's still going to be some silicone residue around the border. So what you want to do is you want to use your cotton bud to clean away any kind of oily residue that you may see. Now this helps really finely kind of define the edge of your piece. Again, being careful not to disturb the cap plastic. Here I can see that actually that is lifting a little bit. I don't know if you can see some pale spots. That's okay, I can live with that. What I don't want is stuff like that going on under the piece. So different silicones have different cure times. Bear that in mind when you're waiting for this to set. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's kind of cured. It's still quite soft. This is my pot from earlier on. And as you can see, yeah, it's definitely set.
Step number 5. Trim and glue. Carefully remove the cap plastic flashing from the white border by lifting and trimming away with a fine brush dipped in solvent, making sure not to disturb the delicate silicone edge. Apply glue to silicone piece and a slightly larger area on skin and dry well.
Okay, so we are back now for step number 5, which is trim and glue. Now if I bring the mould towards the camera, you can see this is now definitely set. It's nice and soft and flexible. And I do indeed have cap plastic film here. Now the whole point of the transfer method is that all your work of blending and trimming that fine cap plastic edge is done in the mould and not on the skin, right? So it means it's more accurate and it's much quicker. So what we're going to do is dip our brush in some solvent. So you want your brush to just be moist. You should be able to brush it against your skin, and for you not really to leave a wet mark behind. It should feel dry. Too much solvent and you'll just disintegrate all your cap plastic when you're trying to trim it away. So the idea is, if I bring this again close to the camera, you can kind of quite clearly see the edge of the silicone has a shininess to it. So what you want to do is you want to trim your cap plastic to about 2 or 3 millimeters away from that silicone edge. So when you apply this and you're blending, that blending edge is pure cap plastic, there's no silicone there, so you're going to get a lovely smooth transition. Now the idea is to catch the light. So the idea is to catch the light so that you can kind of clearly make out the edge. And what I may do sometimes is just kind of roughly draw out where I want to go. That's going to soften that cap plastic in that area. And again I can go around with my brush. So what I tend to do is dip, give it a bit of a flick, get rid of any excess. Now, again, I'm being careful not to disturb the actual silicone edge, right? If I was to pull too hard with my cap plastic, you end up lifting the whole thing off and trying to cut through silicone, and you'll end up with quite bad edges. So I'm just turning it just to make my life easier. And again I'm using the light so I can see what I'm doing. Of course when I say I'm using the light, I'm just angling my head in a certain way so I can see the shine of, you know, the difference in shine of the silicone, the cap plastic, and then again my silicone mould. And that's the end of that. Okay. So what can happen from here is up to you, right? You could apply this piece now, or you may be preparing quite a few of these pieces for shooting the next day or whatnot, or you might have to travel with them. So what you could do, or what the set is intended for you to do, is to be able to place the piece back into the mould for storage. Right? What I suggest you do is use a little bit of silicone adhesive, put a little blob of that in there. That'll dry a little bit. And you can pop your mould back in. And that will hold tight for you to store. Now this can go in your makeup kit or in your suitcase or whatever you travel with.
I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and that you found it informative. Do remember to watch part 3 to get the whole picture of this process. In that video I go over the sorry mate, start again. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Do remember to watch part 3 of this series, which covers the application process of how we do these prosthetics. Remember to like, subscribe and follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Studio Sangeet. And for any more information, come to my website studiosangeet.com.